our Managing Director, waiting to award the winners in the National Shoe Repairing Competition with the handsome shields you see in the background. This is Mr. Harrington of 721 Altrincham, who receives the shield for the best men's and ladies' repair. Note on Mr. Harrington's repair, he's used real leather, and he's saying it's real leather with the real leather mark issued by the Leather Institute. Congratulations, Mr. Harrington. And here is a group of our award winners, and truly you will see that the shoe repairing craftsman is not only a craftsman but an artist as well. In these speciality competition repairs, great time is needed and great artistic expression is given by these repairers to the patterns that they emboss and pin on the soles. Very often these designs, as you can see, are picked out with tiny brass pins. Here are some examples of how shoes are made. You can't properly repair shoes unless you know how they're constructed. In the jolt shown, the upper is attached to the outsole through a rand with a lock stitch seam uniting the upper, rand and outsole. Here there is no bottom filling. The Goodyear welted, the insole is attached by a horizontal chain stitch seam uniting the welt, upper and insole. A lock stitch seam secures the outside to the welt. In little way lock stitch, there is an insole which is attached by little way staples holding the upper to the insole. A lock stitch seam unites outsole, upper and insole, and a bottom filling is required. Most important that all bottom fillings shall be smooth. In cemented, there is an insole which is held by little way staples to the upper, and the outsole is held purely by cement. With silhouette, a horizontal chain stitch seam unites welt, upper and rand. There is an insole, a welt, and the outsole is attached by adhesive only. And now here we are in a typical Timpson shoe repair factory. And the work to be done is brought in on our conventional trolley. Having received the footwear in the factory, we must choose the materials with which they are to be repaired. Taking the man's, we see that it is a Goodyear welted shoe, and the repair called for is leather half sole and heel. A suitable substance for this is to be flexible and will be a 10 iron. This is the latest retan leather, our own development to give good wear with extra flexibility. The top piece is nailed in the preparation department, and because of this we need to be very precise in fitting so that when attaching the nails do not stand proud on the edge. For the ladies, we choose a size 9.5 iron flexible sole which has been pre-cemented in the preparation department. This is a substance which is suitable for the shoe and is standard for all shoe repairs. The top piece again is very carefully selected. We now proceed to benching, and it is most important that we choose a last suitable to fill out the shoe, placing the shoes on the last by using a shoe lift so that no damage is done to the linings. measuring and selecting the line of cut by placing the sole in position, we proceed to cut off the sole. Note that the operator sharpens his knife before rough cutting the waist flap. This is followed by the use of the surform tool to obtain a surface equal to that of the skived sole, which must be at least 1 1/8 inch wide. Note that the surform tool is not kept on the bench, it is kept on a shelf out of the way of damage to its cutting edges. We now proceed to remove the top pieces, and if the condition of the underlift require attention, we must attend to these at the same time. We show a portion of the underlift being removed, and this will later be replaced by a special piece cut to fit. Here we're cutting a rough piece. This is offered up and lightly attached. Later, the complete top piece will finish our heel repair. We now proceed to cement our stripped shoe. This must be very, very carefully done to ensure complete penetration by the cement of every part to which leather is to be attached. Soles are examined, and if any part of the pre-cementing is seen to be missing, this must also be attended to. Whilst these now dry, the cement pressing machine and the last required are prepared. These are articulated last fittings which are required for the work, chosen and made ready for the twin station sole cement press. In the case of men's, the articulation required is only for slight because of the variety of heels used on men's are very similar. For ladies, the variety of heel and sole shapes are vast, and it is most important to select the correct fitting of the four-part insert for this kind of work. We attach it to the rear section, which we call the last, and for the selection of the drop of the waist, it must be allowed to fall inside the shoe to the position required by the shoe, which automatically locks when this is pressed onto the machine. Now the automatic time setter has been set, the shoes and soles placed in for the cement to be reactivated. Soles are carefully positioned. Final adjustments made, and now the shoes must remain in this sole cement press for at least 3 minutes. Now we come to the number 6 rounder. In this demonstration we will see the incorrect use of this machine. is our operator, very carefully rough rounding, all to no avail, because the machine was not set to cut through the thickness of the leather. Now he must finish it by hand, with consequent liability of damage to himself, the shoe, a waste of time, and the waste of the fact that we have an expensive machine there to do the job for him. Adjustment of the chopper bar is by turning the chopper bar to the bottom of its stroke and using the T key on the square nut to release the bar. Never adjust the chopping knife by lifting from its socket. Increase cutting pressure by raising the bar to its highest point in connection with the chopping plate, providing no damage is done to the cutting edge of the blade. Having completely adjusted the chopping bar, we now continue to round the sole. Here we check that the chopping bar is now cutting right through the substance. And now we may expect a perfect cut. In this operation also, very often a channel is placed in the sole to take the stitching. You can just see the faint line of the channel, which we must now proceed to open. Here the channel is being opened so that it may be stitched. The stitcher we use is a Goodyear Rapid outsole stitcher, which has four main operations: an awl to make the hole in the sole, the needle to pick up the thread being placed on by a looper, the thread lifter to lift the thread onto the shuttle point, the locking mechanism to pull the stitches down in the required position between welt and sole. Choosing awls and needles and threads is a very important procedure when doing a variety of work from light to heavy. Now, having completed the stitching, we close the channel first by cementing the lip, which after drying is closed onto the layer of the sole. The lip edges are finally tightened on the sleeking tool, which is above the channel opener. Our next process is trimming. Timpson use British United cutters, which have 16 teeth and should at all times be kept sharp. The more frequently these are sharpened, the less damage is done to the cutting edges by heat and friction. Having chosen the right size of cutter, we proceed to trim. The first stage is completely to rough trim, and then, by wetting the leather with a sponge or brush dipped in water, get a fine finish on the edge. Is completed in this way, and then we come to heel scouring. In each case we require rough abrasive for the first scouring process and a fine abrasive for the finished effect. Where abrasives are new or extremely rough, it is correct once again to use the sponge and water to get a finer finish. When breasting, particular attention should be given to the original line of the breast, so that no alteration of this angle takes place. The breasting of the shoe should be very carefully done. to inking. Here we use basically two colours, a black and a brown. We can make the brown darker by mixing with black, or the brown lighter by using a bottom stain with it. For all purposes of inking, we need 4 brushes for each colour. Half an inch ox hair for waists, breasts and heels, half an inch 4-row toothbrush for men's welts, and a 1/4 inch 2-row toothbrush for very light edges, and a single row for ladies' single soles. The condition of the pots should be perfectly clean and to hold not more than is normally required for a day's work. Now we polish the heels black or brown, making sure that around the heel the entire surface which has been inked should be completely buffed and finalised by polishing. If there are any crevices, this is probably due to bad scouring or a badly worn heel. This should first be filled with a suitable colour stick wax. The 4-part edges are now set on the rotary iron, choosing one of the 7 4-part sets along with 6 rotary single edge irons. On this also there is normally a top piece set on the extreme right. In some cases we have supplied separate hand irons with this set provided on the number 4 4-part edge iron. Now bottom finishing. Here we need the smoothest, most even, undamaged surface with which to create a transparent wax finish to the bottom leather. We scour the bottom with a rough abrasive and a smooth abrasive. In some cases 2 are placed on one roller. Here we are fortunate to have 2 separate 9-inch rollers. If there are any indentations in the 4-part, the Norman keg is used, but this needs to be extremely carefully done so that no scratches are caused to the surface of the grain. Having obtained the final scouring of the surface of the grain, this can now be stained using our stock number 765 bottom stain. This must be carefully applied by sponge so as to eliminate streaking, and when totally dry, stock 746 being applied to the friction mop is then impressed onto the sole and heel. Friction mop puts a surface of wax which must then be smoothed out by the following operation using a yarn mop. Sometimes brushes and mops become soiled and require cleaning. Cleaning prevents soiling which will ultimately spoil the finished work. The finished work should have all traces of bottom finishing materials taken away from the waist, the edges and the breast by use of a duster, and after cleaning of the uppers, the work can then be banked in readiness for the reception department to place into its required position according to ticket number to await the return and collection by the customer. Make sure that your Timpson shoe repairs are the best repairs in Britain.